pudding, really.
Right, we're going live. We're about to go live.
Give us a countdown.
I believe it says you're live, and I'm just looking at the screen. Welcome, anybody who's here. There is a bit of a delay, but I think we're about to go live. And let me check. Okay, here we go. We're going live. All right, we're live. We're live on YouTube.
Hurrah! Hurrah!
All right, we've got Mr. Mark Riley, Mr. Howard Knock, myself, Arthur the Staffy. Oh, fantastic in the background. And Rob is joining us, but Rob's been having technical issues, so he's about to try and join the Zoom call on his phone. So we'll get him Rob in as soon as he's sorted out his issues. But we do have this, but as we promised, it's a parallel universe. Obviously, you can join us on Patreon for a weekly radio show featuring Mark Riley and Rob Hughes, and we are the team as well. That's also myself, Jason, and Howard. And this is the first time we've done a YouTube live Q&A, and as you can see, we've also got Arthur Cam down there. You can see Arthur's tail wagging. Okay, so that's all good. So we're going to kick it off. We've got a bunch of questions. Okay, and let's have a look. I'm going to read some out, and let's see how it goes. Okay, Mark's got his Arthur Cam. Right, this one is from James Wiggins. What's the most recently dated publication you do an episode on? As my formative years coincided with Britpop, and I'd love a Vox or a Select special. Also, I can't remember the live stream. Anyway, that's not important. That's the main question. What would you theoretically be up to doing the most recent episode on?
Okay, so the funny thing is that when we started it in 2004, and we didn't want to do anything that was too recent, okay? And so we were looking at, generally speaking, 70s and 80s. And then all of a sudden, you find out that the 90s enemies and sounds and etc. were actually more kind of recent than you expected. And so it just crept up on us where we thought, actually, we can do something from the early 90s now, because it does seem like a long time ago. And we did some in the early 90s as well, and covered Oasis and all that kind of stuff in the Britpop era. And we didn't do it that much, to be honest. But to be fair, Vox and Select and those kind of publications, they didn't really work. If you look at like the Enemy and the Sounds and the Melody Maker from back in the day, you go through it. I know they're all etched in here now because we look at them so intensely every week for doing the parallel universe. But you've got the main cover, then you open up these 2 or 3 news pages, and then you've got a lot of kind of spurious, slightly sarcastic kind of features in there, often written by Stuart McConey and Seeding Wells, you know. And so there was much more in it. And live reviews and album reviews and teasers. You'd have things from America, and all of these things just were grist to the mill. But for looking at it, like I say, Vox, I think Mark Radcliffe and I used to have a column in Vox, and there was plenty in there, but there was no real hard-bitten journalism, and there was also no real kind of up-to-date news events in there, because they weren't weekly either, were they? As I remember it, they were monthly. So it just didn't work, really. It just doesn't kind of hold together. But the actual later Enemies and Sounds from the early 90s, we will do some of those, but we haven't as yet.
Rob, are you with us?
I am. I've made it.
Well
done, crisis mate. Over. Crisis over. Nice to see you all.
Bob, it wasn't a crisis. We were all quite happy.
I know you were.
But now you're here, you know.
That's so kind of you, mate. Very gracious, as ever.
Yeah.
All right, yes. So how is everybody?
We're all good. All good.
It's a multimedia event, Bob.
I know, mate. I know. What's happened to Arthur? Where's he gone?
Where's Arthur gone? There he is.
Oh, there he is. All right.
There he is. All right.
God, he's cute.
He is. Yeah.
Anyway, it's not the dog whisperer, this, Bob.
I know, mate. I know it isn't. I had to just acknowledge Arthur.
Definitely.
Okay. Here's a question from Sean Kelly. How do you come by the mountain of music papers you use? If you run out, will you need to move to Smash Hits?
We're not going to run out, are we, Bob?
We're not going to run out, and I don't think we'd ever move to smash hits. Not that there was anything against smash hits. I mean, it was great for what it was, but we won't run out. Firstly, because there are so many. I've got 3 boxes in the garage. I know you've got a load in your spare room, haven't you, Mark?
Definitely.
And people send us stuff. We've had was it Saw 6 Steve? Guy called Saw 6 Steve sent us a load of stuff. He must have sent us 4 or 5 boxes already. So it's just a case of working through them.
Actually, I tell you what, I was at Cranken House Festival. I was DJing a few weeks ago, the Sea Power Festival, Muncaster Castle, and I was DJing with my old mate Craig Scanlon, and somebody tapped me on the shoulder, and lo and behold, it was Saw 6 Steve, and I thanked him profusely. A very generous thing. But I tell you, I mean, that's the thing. It actually started off the parallel universe. I went to a record fair around about the year 2000, and I saw an old episode, an old edition of a disc. And it was just pristine. It was £10. It had John Peel, full color cover. And so I just thought, wow, this is great. And when I was reading through it, I just looked at all of these amazing stories and all these little fledgling artists that would then go on to be massive. And so we ended up doing the PU. But you can still catch them now. I mean, there's a charity shop. I shouldn't say this really, but there's a charity shop in Didsbury, and they've got a load of old enemies and stuff.
Have they?
Yeah, they have. Yeah, most of which we've already got in our cellars and spare rooms. But yeah, we've got absolutely loads of them.
Yeah, and the thing is, they're quite hard to. Well, they're great if you see them in charity shops, which is quite rare, I think, apart from that place in Didsbury. But they're quite hard to get hold of. Say if you go onto eBay, they cost a pretty penny these days. There's nothing like going. People know the value of these things, so yeah. The more the merrier, I think. It's kind of difficult. So if you go, I have done this before, especially when we were on the radio, when I needed I don't know, say if I needed like an old enemy or melody maker from a certain year, from like something we hadn't done for a while, like 65 or 66. And you go on there and you'd end up paying sort of 15, 20 quid sometimes for an old paper, which is about average.
Some of them do. For like, say, a 1973, you've got a really great advert for, say, Dark Side of the Moon, so a classic album. It's got a full page advert. You get people selling those pages alone for like 10 quid. So yeah, they are very collectible, and it all depends on who's on the cover. Obviously, if you've got Chicory Tip on the cover, there's not many people who would particularly, be straining at the leash. But if you've got any of the big artists, you've got your Stones or Dylan or Bowie or any of those kinds, then the price automatically goes up, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, Beatles, Stone. Yeah, Bowie stuff's really hard to come by, isn't it? I've tried to, but they're.
I've got them all.
I know you have, mate. I've seen them. You won't part with them. Anyway, one day. But yeah, I don't think we're ever going to run out. Full stop. And I think also the other thing is I've noticed that we started this in 2004 was it? So we're going back 19 years, and sometimes you forget what you've done. So you might be near the end of doing one. I know this happened to me on the radio a few times. You're near the end of one, and suddenly it feels familiar. But prior to that, it just feels like you've never done this before. So there's only so much stuff you can store in your brain.
You've got to hope that everybody listening is as bad at memorizing things as us. That's all.
Exactly.
I mean, if they get to the end of a parallel universe and you go, they've done this one before, it's fine. It doesn't matter, does it?
It doesn't matter. No. Yeah. There's always other stuff to cover. But yeah, you're right.
Next.
Okay. So this one is from our friend Laura in LA. And she said, how much research do you guys do, including Arthur, for an episode?
So, all right, cards on the table. The way that we work it actually is we record 2 episodes at once in this, where I am now, in Howard's studio, an amazing bunker in Urmston. And so I will do the research for one and just get everything prepared for it. And Rob would do the other one. And then we share our particular thoughts and stories. We look into the kind of screen grabs of every single page on the paper. And so if I'm preparing my own personal one, I'll get the paper, I'll film, take a photograph of every single page, and then I'll go through it, work out which is the best order to do things, and then go and screen grab everything in the right order, and then send it to Rob and Jase and Howard. And then from there on in, we have a look at it and try and work out the best bits to talk about. And I would say probably, in all honesty, each personal edition that you do, I probably spend about 4 or 5 hours on.
Yeah,
probably.
on average, yeah. I mean, generally, the stuff. I mean, I wonder if Laura, you're asking sort of like knowledge-wise whether we need to kind of gen up on certain things. There is that, isn't there? You've got to get your facts right. I know we don't always, but if we're talking about people that we really love, then obviously we kind of generally know that we're generally across that stuff. But sometimes there's, like, I think we did one recently, didn't we, where neither of us were quite sure where the band actually came from, what country they were from. So there is all that, and obviously you don't want to look like a Burke, so you do need to do your kind of research just to make sure about stuff, that artists that you're not really across as much.
Yeah, and it's weird because when we take stuff off the page, but we riff a lot, and as you say, you can only really riff on things that you know. And an episode that is to feature in the next couple of weeks, there's one paragraph in the Melody Maker which is throwing ahead to the next edition of Melody Maker, and we spent 9 minutes talking about that one paragraph. So that's a warning, probably, by the way. But if you've got stuff in there, and you just can riff on it, and it goes off on different tangents, then it's research. It's just your life. So I'm 62 years old. Bob is 65 years old.
I know. Thank you.
All this knowledge in here that you just tap into. But obviously throughout the course of going through the magazine, you have to look at it and get the origins of the story and take it from there.
Because the other thing as well that I'm very conscious of, say when we're doing anything from the sort of mid to late 70s, early 80s, I mean, I was still at school, but obviously you were in the fall. So I know that you were kind of part of all that. So, I'm kind of looking at it from an outsider and also from a slightly historical point of view, whereas you were living that stuff. And those episodes I enjoy because I like the stories that you've got, because, you kind of knew everybody, or if you're like supporting them or hanging out with them, you've got a lot of stories from that time. And I think that's a really valuable part of all this.
Very generous, Bob. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But the thing is that we're both really interested in psych, aren't we? And so we know quite a lot about that. The funny thing was we did the A to Z of Davey Bowie podcast. For Six Music, we did the A to Z of punk, which we did really tap into a lot of it from our knowledge. And as you say, I kind of lived through it better than you did. But then we did the A to Z of rock, and we were struggling because, we weren't interested in the least, no offense to anybody, but, Judas Priest, or those kind of bands, Uriah Heep, we didn't really know much about them. We couldn't really riff very much on it. And so it was pretty dry. And it was at that point, we were like, we're done now with the A to Z. Davey Bowie A to Z was 72 episodes long. So it was about 37, 38 hours worth of it. And I don't think that will ever be bettered. But a lot of it was, there was research in there and a lot of what we knew from our experience and love of Davey Bowie's career. But it does depend, exactly what you're tapping into.
Yeah, I think with the A to Z of rock, right, you get, it's a fine line, isn't it, between sort of knowing what you're talking about and then having to do so much research. It just feels like a bit of an information dump, and I think that's what the A to Z of rock turned out to be in the end. So it was like you say, it was a little bit dry, wasn't it? And that's not the point of doing any of the A to Zs or the PU. You want it to be a bit more interactive and a bit more knowledgeable.
It should have been called Wikipedia's A to Z,
because that's what it was. Let's face it. With a bit of double checking with classic rock, but anyway.
By the way, where's Arthur? We've lost him on Arthur Cam.
Oh,
I can just see somebody's knee.
Yeah.
It's my best angle. That's my knee. Arthur is outside.
All right.
Oi, come on, here he comes.
Hey!
Oh, look at that. Look at him.
There we go.
There's our mascot.
There's your fix.
All right. I've got a question for H next.
Oh, get out of town.
Get out of town. Yeah. And this one is where are we? From Budgie in Edinburgh.
Oh yeah.
He says, "You're obviously the brains behind the operation."
Oh, forget this question.
What other work should we know you for?
Oh, okay.
Oh my God.
Don't be modest, H.
You've been on Crime Watch quite a lot.
Yeah.
On the wrong side of the camera.
Jeremy Kyle show.
Metal Detectors Weekly.
Well, not yet,
Yeah,
but I'm
not
hopefully going to be on that at some point. Mainly TV stuff. Marc knows what I do, and Rob and Jase. So lots of sound for telly shows like Match of the Day, big sporting events, some light entertainment, that kind of thing.
Well, you did the World Cup, didn't you? The World Cup in Russia.
I did the World Cup.
Yeah.
The Olympics. I've been to Russia, Brazil.
The thing
But
about
you do
Howard,
the,
right?
is it the X Factor you do? Britain's
Not
Got
the X
Talent?
Factor. No, The Voice.
The
The
Voice.
Voice, that's the
yeah,
one. The Voice.
Yeah.
The thing is that obviously, you know, I mean, I work on the radio occasionally, part-time job, and Howard's been in to our studio and seen how it all works and all that kind of stuff, and enjoys watching the bands. And of course, we've asked Howard if he can watch him doing Match of the Day with Gary and Alan.
That's true.
And
Yeah.
we've not been in yet.
No,
We haven't. I mean, that was a few years ago when we asked. I'll be absolutely
I
honest.
knew you were going to bring this up.
You'd think it would be a big give and take, wouldn't you? I mean, like, look at me talking, I mean, but yeah,
got
at least with
jumped through a lot of
you,
hoops.
you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers and
Is there?
emails.
Right? Is there really? Right.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. So it was via a mate, a mutual mate of ours called Lee Hardman, right? Okay, who put us in touch with each other, and this was initially for a program that I did straight to iPlayer, obviously, called All Shook Up. And the music was great. I didn't enjoy doing it at all, really. And it only had one series. And if we had got a second series, I was going to try and draw other presenters in from Six Music. But we had Wire on there, and we had Slug and Wade Pitchers and Jane Weaver and Richard Dawson. The bands were so great. And I tell you what, the sound was amazing as well. And that's where I met Howard actually doing the sound on All Shook Up.
Okay. All right. Just wondering how. So what was the first thing you worked on for television, going way back?
The first thing was something called Children's Ward, which was like a. Do you remember that? It was.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, so it was on that show. So I mean, it was set in a hospital children's ward, a little kids drama thing.
Right.
And then I worked on Stars in Her Eyes, Leslie Crowther. You know, back in the day.
Gosh. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what else now.
You see, now he says that. This is why I don't want to burst any bubbles, but this is a wig, and he's obviously just, from Stars in Their Eyes. It's steeped in there.
Can't help
That's
it.
what it is.
I can't help it.
It never leaves you. It never leaves you.
Yoko Ono with the glasses on.
I was trying to think how you do it. It's not Yoko Ono, but
monitoring it.
Yeah. Nice. Put your shades on, man.
Destroy the illusion.
Sorry. Okay.
But yeah.
To Rob from Lee in Brighton. What was the first time you appeared on the radio? Was it on Six Music, or had you done it before?
The first appearance was on Six, so that'd be 2004 when Marc asked me to appear. Was it called Brain Surgery then, or Rocket Science?
It was Rocket Science.
Rocket Science. Okay, so that was the first PU I did. I had been on. Had been on the radio once. I mean, it's a long story, but I'll shorten it. I mean, the way I know Marc in the first place is I won a David Bowie competition when Marc and Lard show was on the afternoons on Radio 1. So that was 1999. And the prize was to get some signed Bowie stuff and to chat to him on air. So I don't know. I think it happened on the Monday or Tuesday. On the Friday, Bowie was due to be on air down the line from New York. And obviously there was Marc and Lard. And so that was my first appearance on radio, and that was terrifying, exciting, but terrifying at the same time. So prior to the Six Music work, that was it. That was all I'd done.
I mean, the thing is that you won the Bowie thing legitimately, because he used to email all the time this cheesily cheerful chart challenge as Simply Bob, and he got pulled out of the hat. And I thought, right, it was a signed Guy Pilar, David Bowie, Bowie at the Beam thing, a really, really beautiful thing. And normally you would have to put it in the post and hope for the best, but of course, Simply Bob living in Simply, which is just around the corner from Sale where I live. Yeah. I said, right, well, no point in that. We'll just meet up. And it was only at that point that I actually found out that Rob was working for Uncut and a journalist. And it was just a few years down the line. I came up, mentioned before, looking at the disc and thinking that with John Peel on the cover, thinking, oh, this would be great to talk about on the radio. And that's where it came from. Yeah. And it was only because Bob said to me, I said, what do you do? He said, I'm a graphic designer and design T-shirts and all kinds of things. And beyond that, I write for Uncut as well. And so it just stored in my mind. And when I was thinking of who might be able to do the PU with me, I just thought, what about that Bob Hughes character from Timperley? And so it came to pass.
Yeah, I remember the email coming through, and obviously if people who obviously you email people, you don't call them by their name, it's usually hello pal or hello mate. So I remember this email coming through and to the effect of, would you like to do some stuff on the radio? And I just thought you sent it to the wrong person. So I didn't reply. And I think you sent it about three or four times before the penny dropped, because I just thought, what's he want with me? One of those, but yeah.
You see, I'm a great talent spotter.
Well, you
well,
are. You are. Oh, fine.
The thing, that's the truth, though, Bob. I mean, the bottom line is that I've worked with you for a lot longer than I worked with Mark Radcliff, and people I mean, still the Radio 1 show that I did with Mark Radcliff was big. There was millions of listeners and stuff, and people were always kind of associate me. Even like 5 years after having moved on from Radio 1 to Six Music, I'd be in a gig and somebody go, "Where's your mate?" "What mate?" Right. "Mark Radcliffe." "He's probably at home with his wife. I don't know, And so, but we've been doing this for much, much longer.
Yeah. And the first one was terrible. I have to say, I just really thought, this isn't for me. This isn't going to work. But I don't know. It fell into place pretty quickly.
But the first one, if you remember, Bob, the first Parallel Universe was actually a pilot, and I don't agree with doing pilots at all, and I don't want to patronize anybody. You know the fact that it's something that isn't broadcast necessarily, and if you've got any sense, you'll record a pilot, and if it's any good, you can put it out. But we went through it, and I'd not really explained to you what was expected and the best way to do it, and so you went through the paper, and it was just a bit kind of and that happened, and hang on a minute, let's have a look. It's out somewhere. You're a bit like the what was he, Wilton? I see it somewhere. Let me have a look.
Definitely.
Then I said to you, right, all you need to do is get that organized like this. You came back, the first one we did on air, you absolutely nailed it. And it has been of the same kind of standard ever since. And so, you did nail the first one, definitely. Just the pilot.
Too kind.
Was, just a little bit all over the shop.
I think after a while, to be honest, it just kind of takes care of itself. It's just two blokes, riffing on stuff. And I think that's the beauty of it.
Don't say that, Bob. Don't we?
Oh no, there's a lot of hard work still goes in. As you mentioned before, 5 hours of research,
talent,
and talent as well, and talent. But
talent.
Hope that answers the question anyway.
Talent,
sort of.
Let's go move kind of in a similar vein. Another question from Alice in Chester is: how did the parallel universe come about in the first place?
Kind of answered that really in the fact that I bought that copy of Disc and was just looking through it. I used to have like a tiny little an advert for David Bowie playing in a pub or something, and you think, well, that's worth talking about, because that's the kind of thing that was so unimportant at that point in time that nobody will have paid any mind to it, apart from perhaps the 30 people who went to see David Bowie. And so that was it, really. And I ended up giving, did I give that copy of that paper to Tom Ravenscroft? I might have done. But that was it, really. I just bought it because it was a beautiful kind of artifact in perfect condition for £10. And then I just recognized the fact that it was a feature that had legs. And I have to say, I mean, I've been in radio for 33 years now, and I've come up with an awful lot of different features. I mean, dozens and dozens and dozens of them. A lot of the stuff on Radio 1 that we did, the stupid stuff largely involved me. But the Parallel Universe, I have to say, is the best feature I've ever come up with, I reckon. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's got, just going back to that. So when you found that disc initially, were you kind of looking here in the back of your mind, were you looking for a feature, or was it just one of those things that you kind of reacted to?
No, I just bought it because it had John Peel on the cover, and like I say, it was pristine. It was a 10, and I just thought I was going to frame it. I wasn't even really that bothered. I wasn't thinking, I thought it'd be interesting to have a look at. But then when you went through it and all these little things, like Tyrannosaurus Rex just getting together or whatever, and then you think, well, 4 years down the line, he's playing Wembley. He's playing 2 shows in one day at Wembley. This is interesting. And so it just kind of like, it just emerged, really.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. H, I think you've aged 20 years there in space of 30 seconds.
Itchy,
but
that wig. That's
was it? Yeah.
It's very hot in here.
Yes. Yeah. That's what Marc's got his shades on. Yeah. Okay. There you go. There's an insight into our relationship. Anyway, I hope that answered the question.
So here's an interesting proposition from Marc Sharratt, who commented on the Patreon, which of course you can join. Okay, for just £1 a week. And he said that now that the parallel universe has gone stratospheric and it's really professional with tonight's premiere, thank you. I'm glad you appreciate it. That's really nice.
Yeah.
How about doing a live on stage parallel universe at the Larkhan Festival, or presumably any other kind of like live?
Well, I don't know. This is for all of us, I suppose, isn't it? I mean, we have talked about this, haven't we? The possibility of doing this.
I mean, I know live podcasts are kind of a thing now and like kind of popular.
I mean,
but I mean, Bob has to go further than his front door.
Well, unless you come and do it in Leeds or Beverley. There's the East Riding Theatre here. That would be a good little venue.
We could all meet in the Midlands.
Wolverhampton.
I'm just wondering how big that room is that Rob's in.
Oh, this room. It's no bigger than a box room, mate. But we could probably get some people in the garden. But it is something we have discussed, isn't it? Just try it. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts involved, but I think that would be interesting. The only thing that concerns me about that, to be honest, is that it would be me and you, or the four of us, just really staring at a paper and talking into mic. I don't know how watchable it is. I know we've just had a filmed episode, but yeah, that's my only slight concern. I mean,
it's not a spectator sport.
It isn't a spectator sport. I mean, there's visual aspects.
It would have to take a different format.
Yeah. I mean, could we have a big
special, and it'd be more of a kind of interactive thing with the audience? So I think you'd have to change it up a bit.
Because I always wonder, are the people, and maybe this is for people out there to answer, are there, certain things people would like us to do, either publications or eras or subjects? Is there, way? Because at the moment it is just you and I, Mark, isn't it? Just choosing stuff off our own backs. I just wondered if there's anything that people really particularly want to see or hear.
Well, I did discuss earlier, somebody was talking about doing some slightly later stuff like the Britpop stuff. And I did mention that we did go that far while we were doing the Six Music, and we will do more again. But particularly as the passage of time runs on. But the journalism got less interesting. No offense to the journalists, but like I say, if you look at the early 70s, you've got your Nick Kents and then you go into people like Gavin Martin and interesting Charles Shaw Murray, interesting characters in the 70s and 80s, and there were less personalities in journalism as time went by. It just seemed to be a little bit more kind of people earning a crust and wanting to get to meet bands, which is all cool, but it's fine. But they weren't, a lot of the journalists in the NME in the early 70s, careful Mark, took more drugs than the people who were interviewing.
That's right. That's right.
Not that I'm advocating that, but it was just that was the mindset. So it was
yeah, definitely. I mean, we have tried. I shudder to think really, but we did try for that very reason, just to kind of broaden the scope of it when we're on the radio, just doing some stuff from the noughties, and they are just like pamphlets. There's no real substance in there. And it's my fault this. I remember doing one from about 2007, and it was the longest half hour of my life. I think it was just excruciating. I don't know what it felt like to listen to, but my God, it was excruciating to do. And I think I apologized to you the next day because it was just a terrible, awful radio. But it's just trying to extract stuff, interesting stuff from things that don't have a lot of substance. I think that's the issue.
It just became very, very factual and kind of like fandom, really. The journalists wouldn't really take people to task. These all famous stuff like Glamo interviewing the Manics and Richie doing that For Real thing, which was an extreme, obviously, but there was more interesting things going on. I think the bands were more interesting, and I think the journalists were more interesting. I'm not saying the music was better or worse. That's a case of taste. But I think that there was more to dissect and to delve into.
I think so, and also
between the lines.
Yeah, and also I think as we've discovered, especially in the late 60s, the relationship between artists and journalists were completely different. Obviously, now you're trying to get to somebody, you have to go through so many different layers of management and PR and everything, and representation and promoters and all sorts of stuff. Whereas back in the day, if you wanted to interview Paul McCartney, say in the 60s, he'd probably be in the Cromwellian, or the Scotch of St. James in London, and you could just go in there. So journalists sort of built up this rapport. You didn't have to go through another mediator to get there. It was just way more casual, I suppose.
I mean, a lot of the journalists in the late 60s were going around to the Beatles' houses. It was just a different scenario altogether.
Completely.
All right. So this one's from our friend and a chap who's very good at the Anagram Parsons quiz.
Oh, aye.
Martin in Timperley.
Oh, yes. Hello, Martin.
He's got good skills on the anagrams. All right, he's got two questions, so it's a two-parter. The first part is
£2 then.
£2, yeah. His subscription's gone up.
£2.
Right. Question one: who decides which tracks to play? And he follows that on with: is it my imagination, or are the podcast selections less obvious than those chosen to play on Six Music? And the second part of his question is completely unrelated: how did you four meet?
Oh, okay. Well, should we do the first part first?
Yeah, what was
I reckon there's, hang on. There's three questions there. So the first, about the tunes. Okay, so if I'm doing simple rule is, if I'm doing the paper, I'll choose the tunes, and Mark's doing it, he'll choose them. And occasionally we'll say, or one of us might say, "Oh, this didn't work," or we're just a bit stuck for time, or we've been talking about a certain subject, so it makes sense to play something by them. So there is a bit of room for manoeuvre, isn't there?
Yeah, and it is more flexible than we were on Six Music, certainly in many different respects, but also because of the fact that in the parallel universe, to be honest, what we would have is 4 tunes that Bob always chose, really, unless there was something like, boring, like a Clash. Maybe I don't mean the band The Clash. I mean, like, we'd play a tune in the PU, but we just played it the night before or the week before, and we'd say, "Oh, yeah, I've just played that, I've just played them." So that kind of boring stuff would get in the way. But generally speaking, Bob would pick the tunes on Six Music anyway. But you used to always have an arsenal of spares that we could leapfrog to if we needed.
A load of standbys. As for the, I'm just trying to think here. So that stuff on the. So are you saying that on the podcast the choices are a bit more esoteric,
more eclectic, perhaps?
Okay. There's probably something in that, isn't there? I know we can just play whatever we like at this point.
Yeah, it is. I would say so. I don't know why exactly, because we got free reign on Six.
Yeah.
It's not like I can turn around and say, "Look, oh, you go, oh, woe is us." We had to, we had our hands tied. You're on.
Yeah.
None of that. Yeah, we just kind of went to it, really. So, but there's so many interesting things out there, and I tell you what, I mean, we do source it now from a well-known source of music, online subscribing, all that kind of stuff. And we're not sponsored by them. we can't plug them. But with the BBC, there's certain parameters of what you have got available to you.
Yeah,
I've got an amazing library, of course. We do delve a little bit deeper these days. I would say that's true.
Yeah, definitely. What was the other part of the question? How do we all meet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we've covered ours, haven't we?
We've covered ours, yeah. So I met you over Bowie. Go on.
Yeah, and we've covered me and H doing All Shook Up. And so, all right, then we did the A to Z of David Bowie podcast, and we're really proud of that. And so, initially, because I'd met Howard through Lee and All Shook Up and all that kind of stuff, it was me and you, Rob, and we needed somebody who could, have the brains and the talent to actually put it all together and help us record. And edit and all of those things that we can't do. We could talk, as we know, particularly about Bowie, for days on end, but we couldn't do all the other stuff and knock it into shape and make it something that was worth listening to. And so we did it, and it was going really well. We were loving it, but we were a little bit frustrated. And people were saying, "Oh, you're getting 12,000 people, 10,000 people a week, like, downloading it," and we're thinking, "Oh, but there's 45 million David Bowie fans out there. Where are they?" And so I just went on Twitter. And this is a remarkable part of the story. So I went on Twitter and just said, "Can anybody do an advert for the A to Z of David Bowie for us?" Just like, a 30-second thing. And within about, I would say, half an hour, this character popped up on Twitter, said, "Do you mean like this?" And it was a complete alphabet spinning with all these mad images of Bowie flying everywhere. And I was like, oh my word. And I got in touch. It was this guy called Jason Reed. And I was like, "Mate, this is incredible. Do you mind if we use this? We can pay you something, just use it once." And Jason, I have to say it now, is the most generous man I've ever met in my life. And he just went, "No, use it." And I love doing it, and I love the podcast. And really, if you want, I'll do one for every episode. And it was like, oh my word. And it got to the point, did it not, that, we'd get the podcast back, and they were normally 30, 40 minutes long, weren't they? And then I would look forward to listening to them and seeing how they'd come together. But I was looking forward to almost as much the 1 or 2 minute trails that Jason did for us, featuring Dick Emery.
That was the highlight of my week. They were just fantastic.
And they kind of had little almost like recurring themes within themselves, like little 70s motifs. And
it was amazing. Jason, you can get them through. We had the.
They're all on YouTube.
Yeah, they're all on YouTube.
Yeah. Bowie YouTube channel. You can see.
Go and have a look at them. I mean, if you've not seen them, you will see exactly. They're just. I still watch them on my phone now. I've still got them all on my phone now. Yeah. And whenever I'm trying to explain who Jason is and what he does, I just show them that, and people go, "Wow, that's just the best." And so that's how we all came together. And so it was just.
It's amazing how kind of random it was. If I hadn't have seen your tweet.
Yeah.
Or we wouldn't even know each other.
Yeah, just a matter of interest, Jay. So, how long would that kind of take you to put together? I mean, there seems to be so much packed into those little trailers. How much work would that involve?
Maybe a couple of hours.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all, right?
Well, I've been doing it for years, so the actual mechanics of it, I'm very quick with. The bit that took probably the most time was like just sourcing like video clips and images to go in there. Yeah, you know, just either finding a relevant clip or finding something funny because you know, like little cheeky Dick Emery wink or something like that.
Yeah,
so to go with what you were saying.
But obviously, you would hope that you put anything out there, you do something creative, then you don't kind of crave awards. But if somebody says, all right, you're in the top 3 for podcasts and you might get an award for it or whatever. And I always thought it'd be nice to get an award for something, but I always thought that the trails that Jase did were worthy of an award because they were just so head and shoulders above everything else. I know we're bigging you up, Jase, but it's only because it's absolutely.
But they were great fun to do. I used to love doing them. I used to look forward to getting the kind of audio clip you sent through and then thinking, right, what images I'm going to put to this audio. You know, and you know, and that's why when you asked, I said, "Oh, I'll do it for free because it's so much fun to do." And obviously, you know, that's how I got into it, being a huge Bowie fan. That's why I was listening to the podcast in the first place, and following you on Twitter. So that's why I was kind of responded quickly when you said, "Can anybody do a Bowie animation?" I just sent in a quick Bowie animation, and then Mark said, "The direct messages California," and then that's how it all started. You know.
Yeah, no, I love that.
The best thing about it all, obviously, is, and you know, you can find this a bit cloying, but we're all just really great mates now as well.
Yeah, that's a nice thing.
Yeah.
You know,
I was going to say it might be worse, Jase. Just a bit of context. I mean, when did you start kind of getting involved in video? How long has that been going on?
Oh, good Lord. So I've been doing it for a long time. I mean, I started making my first videos at university in the 90s.
Okay.
You know, making like little videos for like local music bands and stuff like that. Back with like massive VHS cameras, and stuff like that. So I've always been, in a kind of way involved in video sort of making and production, and so it goes back. But the digital stuff, obviously, that's kind of a new thing. So that's probably about 12 years. Okay. When the actual sort of software became available to do the kind of stuff that you can kind of do for Bowie, because that really wasn't available before.
Yeah, sure.
People like computers and digital kind of editing functionality became available to people.
Yeah, I think my favourite little icon in there was that woman. Was she like from an old Roman film or something with a harp? That was my favourite bit.
Because obviously you had a harp as an audio transition.
Yeah.
So and I just found, and I don't even know what film it's from, but it would just fit perfectly.
It would carry on up the harp.
Yeah, basically.
You know. Okay, any more questions, Jase?
Yeah, I've got loads. What is your favourite era based on the episodes you've made? Was there a golden period for music journalism?
Ooh.
And that's from David Harris.
I'll go first then.
Yeah, go on.
And I suppose it does just hark back to when I first started buying them. But I first started buying the NME particularly. I ended up getting them all. So it was NME Sounds and Melody Maker. Melody Maker was always a bit more dry and an awful lot of adverts for amplifiers and musicians wanted. It was kind of the Musos version of it.
Yeah.
And Sounds was always a little bit more kind of metal, really, and got more and more so as towards the end of the 70s. But the NME was really completely and utterly my magazine, and it would have been from like 1973 to 1977, I would say. That period where I've mentioned already, people like Nick Kent, and you would have Charles Shaw Murray, and there was loads of great journalists. And towards the tail end of that short period, you would also get the journalists that I was less keen on, like Julie Burchill and Tony Parsons. Yeah. Personally, I didn't really kind of like that. I didn't get that. It became a lot more cynical. Whereas, as I say, he wasn't cynical particularly, the 70 to 77 kind of era. It was just a bit more out there and a bit more. It was barbed, It was certainly barbed, but these people were hanging out. Nick Kent used to hang out with the Stones all the time. And he was like, you know, if you want to talk about Murray the K being the fifth Beatle, and he was like the sixth or seventh Rolling Stone, wasn't he? You know?
Yeah. And he had his own band, of course, didn't he? Subterraneans as well. So he was part of that too.
Yeah, for sure.
I was going to say, probably for me, I mean, looking back, obviously going through this stuff regularly now, probably late 70s to the very early 80s. It's very, very unusual to choose, say, get a magazine from, I don't know, from say 76 through to 81, 82 and not have it been really good. I mean, it was just an incredible time for like creativity music wise. There's just so much going on and a lot of good journalism before it got overly cynical, you know, so that's probably my little golden era.
There was one period of the NME particularly, and it was when Stuart McConey famously came up with the apocryphal story of Bob Holness playing saxophone on Baker Street, didn't he? But he put it in the NME and it became fact then, which is a way that these things go. But at the same time, there were other journalists in there. Davy Quantick, one of the great comedic minds, you know, and so full of mischief. And there was also Seething Wells and people like that. So it was great, but also at the same time, you never really knew if what you were reading was true. You know, so it could just be like and particularly once you find out that Bob Holness didn't play saxophone,
didn't he?
On Baker Street, then you just think to yourself, "Oh, I've been had now." And then you read something, you go, it's like Twitter now. I mean, I am gullible. I'll hold my hands up and I'll go and I'll send a really mad tweet to like the kids, and they go, "Dad, you've been had again." Right. Unlike it quickly.
Comes with age, mate. Comes with age.
By the way, I need to issue a correction. The how did you form meet question was actually from Nick in York.
Oh, right. Okay. Just down the road from me. Yeah. Sorry about that, Nick.
Posterity, yeah.
Sorry. What about you, Tom? Just wonder, you know, as regards like music papers and stuff, what was your kind of golden period?
I mean, I'll be honest. Cards on the table. I kind of only read what was left on the bus, if you know what I mean. It was not something regular that sort of came through the letterbox. For me. So it was just like a duck in, duck out type thing.
Yeah.
You know, enemies generally, but But musically, I think I would always sort of favour sort of late 70s, early 80s. You know, my cut-off point really is sort of 90 with music anyway.
Yeah.
Personally speaking, but
you're going to come see Warm Douche with me tomorrow night, mate. So you're still
that's true. Yeah, but we're talking historically here, aren't we?
Right. Okay.
Right. I mean to start a row, but anyway. But yeah. Okay. It's quite good though.
I'm trying to remember what it was, but back in the 80s, there was like a free music magazine that you could just get in music shops. And I need to try and Google it. In fact, and it was pretty good.
Right, I don't remember that.
It very well.
No, it doesn't. You can't remember what it was called.
But it was also like technical stuff, and so it was also a bit about musicianship and playing.
It's just in Morecambe.
So no, I don't know. I mean, it was in Morecambe.
It was Morecambe Music
in the local music shop. Just go pick it up.
Right.
And it had like chord of the month, and it'd be some really weird chord and stuff like that. And I can't remember what it was, but it was in the 80s. And
I'll tell you what, if people had to pay £1 for every question they'd asked, I think Bob's on about 40 quid now. He could just ask us these questions in the pub.
Just trying to get a dialogue going. I'll shut my mouth and teach you.
Next. I'm going to send you my bank details over later. But I had pasta for my tea tonight, mate.
All right, mate. So did I, actually.
Great mind.
Right, go on. Anyway. Jase, yeah.
Right, so anyway, completely unrelated to music question, but Jono wants to know, are any of us good at darts?
Wow.
Ooh,
you've got a dartboard.
I've got a dartboard. It's been in the cellar for about 15 years, but I did get 180 once.
Did you?
But it wasn't in the pub.
Oh,
no one saw it.
Trace saw it.
Oh, okay.
My wife Trace saw it, and she was down the far end of the room. It makes it sound like we lived in a mansion, but we didn't. We lived in one big room in a shared house. But Trace was right at the other end of the room, and I got 180, and obviously, flipped. And then was shouting to Trace, and she go, "No, that's good." But God. Bloody God, you can't do any better. She went, "Oh, great." I went, "No, come and have a look, be my witness." So she had to haul herself up Come and have a look. Yeah, 3 darts in 180. Right, okay, back again. But I've got 140 every now and then. But these days, I'm going back now. I am going back probably 30 years.
Right.
I wager I'm crap now, Howard.
Yeah. What? Whether you're crap?
No. You've never witnessed me play
No, I haven't. No. Well, I think I'm the same thing. I think. Well, you're tall, so you probably got quite a reach.
Yeah, you got an
I
advantage.
think that's what it is. You almost put them in.
Well, I was saying they only stand 2.5 feet away from the board.
Yeah. Hey, look at this, Trace. Yeah, 180.
Yeah, throw a bit. So no, it's. I've never. I always like the thought of it, and every now and again, I've got a dartboard in the shed. The darts will come out. I will play the darts, but then I'm just not very good at it.
Right. Okay.
Right. Fair enough. I used to have a dartboard with, I don't know, at home, and then I think I chucked one, and it hit my mum's. It hit my mum's cabinet in the kitchen, and she barred me from playing darts at home. So that was probably the end of that. So yeah.
Is that why you had to move to Yorkshire?
That was it, mate. So that was the end of any dart career. It is, yeah. It's a darts escape.
There was that criminal recently who got caught, didn't he? He was taped, wasn't it? So they saw pizza boxes.
Oh yes, in Romania. Yeah,
they worked out where he was and found him and arrested him. Now, I would imagine there's probably people looking for you now.
Well, there's nothing behind me apart from an on-air sign. But yeah, darts-wise, I think I'd rather just watch Bullseye, which is just genius television.
I've got a nice Bullseye story.
Oh,
yeah.
Go on.
Well, as a kid, like Jim Bowen's from my hometown, and he's my uncle used to be friends with him and used to do the music for his like live tours, Bullseye Live and stuff like that. But I remember it would probably be about 9. I was probably about 8 or 9. I went to Jim Bowen's house, and he was taking me. It was in Hess Bank near Morecambe, and he took me out, and he said, "Come here, lad, come here." He said, "Have a look at that. What's that?" And it was this big box underneath his TV. And I said, "I don't know, Jim, I've never seen anything like that." He said, "That is a VCR." And I said, "What's that?" This is amazing. You can go out, you can tape things. You never miss a TV program. And I was like, "Oh, Jim, I missed a TV program last night. Can you tape it for me?" And he said, no, son. Doesn't work. You can't travel through time." And I always remember Jim Bowie's lessons in time travel, and that stuck with me forever. He was a lovely bloke. I loved him. He was a really nice fella.
So was that the first ever VCR that you saw? Jim Bowen's place?
I saw VCR was at Jim Bowen's house in Hess Bank.
Wow.
Well, he used to do Bullseye, not the Jim Bowen years, but who was it who did it?
Dave Spikey.
Dave Spikey.
Yeah. Oh, did you?
Yeah, had a little sort of resurgence. I can't remember how many years ago now, but he had Tony on it. He did the scores.
Well, Tony Green.
Yep.
Oh,
Tony Green.
Great, wasn't he?
Greenwood.
Good one.
That's the guy.
Yeah, so he was still on it. Yeah, yeah.
Wow. I didn't know Bullseye went on tour, so it was a touring
He
Bullseye.
used to do a live show.
Right.
Oh, really?
Gosh.
supporting Metallica. Maybe not. Okay, any more questions, Jase?
Yes, of course. Yes. Okay. This one's from Maddie, who said, "I love the A to Z of the David Bowie podcast. Was it a daunting prospect to undertake?"
It turned into a daunting prospect, didn't it? I think we went into it. It was Mark's idea. I think we went into it thinking, yeah, of course, we love this guy. If we're going to choose anybody at all, this is the guy to do. And we know our stuff generally, but then, as soon as you get, it was literally as soon as you get into A and B, and you realize you either do this kind of half-cocked and just skim over a load of stuff, or you do it properly and really investigate everything that's out there. So we just ended up delving so deeply into that. I think it was one of those things. It didn't feel like a daunting prospect at the start, but it just turned into a very, very thorough undertaking.
Well, that's why we're so proud of it. I mean, we actually did it in this room in Howard's studio. And so, but we did the notes for A, as you say. And I remember we were doing it and doing it and doing it. And you're looking at the clock and you're thinking, we're an hour in and we're like 3/4 of the way through. So we ended up doing probably an hour and 20 minutes on A and thought, well, this is 2 episodes. And then we realized that what we thought might be 26 episodes would possibly turn into 54, 56, 72 at the end, you know. But that was it. As you say, it wasn't that daunting a prospect, but we kind of made a rod for our own back. So, I mean, we did a section on Bowie's Driver.
Yeah, that's
we
right.
did all sorts, didn't we?
That's right. Yeah, Tony Maskin. Yeah, there was all that. I think it might have been like C or D. There was one letter that we ended up like seemed to be doing 4 or 5 episodes of it.
I think it was.
Was it T? Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
about 10 episodes.
Probably S and T. Yeah, it just seemed to go on and on forever.
Yeah.
But I think in the end, we were, as Mark was saying, we were kind of driven by that idea of, you know, if this is going to be the definitive one, let's do it. You know, that ended up being the challenge. And we discovered so much stuff, you know, ourselves, didn't we? There was kind of weird factoids and episodes that I'd never heard. I like the Christopher Lee thing, you know, about recording with Christopher Lee. I love that, you know, discovering stuff that I just had no idea about. And so, yeah, it worked on a lot of different angles, I think.
I don't think it will ever be bettered. I really don't. You know, there's different people doing different angles and aspects of Bowie's life. But if you do just want to go through it via the alphabet, then it really does. It's pretty comprehensive, you would have to say.
Yeah.
And someone posted in the chat that is it still available? And yes, it is available on iTunes. Just search for A to Z of David Bowie. You'll find it.
Yeah, it's on there. I think we're both proud of that. It was quite an undertaking. Well, all 4 of us really got involved in that.
Right, here's one from Colin Simpson. Have you ever found anything you wouldn't read out? I know times were different and it was okay to call people things you can't say now. You must have found things outside of what you would come under the amnesty. So obviously.
Yes. In a word, I mean, we've recorded 2 today, which are going to go out next week and the week after. And there is one word in there. Funnily enough, it's a letter about the New York Dolls. And it is a great letter. I won't say too much more than that, but he uses one word within it, which I refused to repeat. But he was doing it kind of in defense, but it was definitely unenlightened. It is weird because like you've got Rab C. Nesbitt on now, and it's been repeated on a channel. I can't remember what the channel is, but it does say at the beginning, there's a disclaimer, these times were different, you know, and it isn't, some of it is kind of a little bit shocking, but not as bad as some of the other ones from the 70s, which would never get shown again, and quite rightly. But there are words, definitely. And there are sentiments, and we have done it before, haven't we, Bob, where we'll say, all right, and then we'll go, oh, right, okay, this is what was written at the time, but obviously we're distancing ourselves from the sentiment or the words.
Yeah, I mean, that does happen quite a bit, especially, I don't know, well, do you know, it can even happen when we're looking at 90s ones, but especially the sort of 70s and 80s ones, some of the kind of real sort of casual sexism and racism is just shocking, isn't it? And so we do make a point of trying to say, please bear in mind, this is from the times, and it is difficult to read out some of it, and, often I've just edited myself as I've gone along because I don't want to read out certain things. I think the only other thing we do avoid on a serious note is people who've been since sort of convicted of stuff. We just tend to just ignore that completely because there's no way around that really. You've just got to.
There was a thing about the Runaways, wasn't there, recently? And the opening paragraph in The Enemy was about the journalists not having got their phone numbers, but they had, you know, and you're like, really? And then it said, like, but the photographer has got the phone numbers. Oh, yeah. Right, okay.
And then there's like, especially the late 60s ones, if they're just talking about any kind of female singer-songwriter, you know, it's all that approach first. It's all about how they look and how they sound first, and then the music is secondary almost. It's pretty second rate, you know.
Yeah, something else that we're going to negotiate in the next couple of weeks is a poll, and it is funny because it says, like, you know, artists men, artists girls. It's not even men and women. It's not boys and girls. It's just everything is kind of geared towards the male, you know. Very, very predominant in the 70s. Worst in the 70s, I think. Yeah. In the 80s, it became more enlightened, and you would still have, you know, people in there. No Names, No Patrol. On the Sounds magazine, particularly, which was more of a kind of a Larry magazine than, say, The Enemy or Melody Maker. And so, some of the sentiments.
Yeah, very blokish as well. Weirdly, but just going back to that poll we were doing, the strange thing about that poll was, I mean, sometimes it would be like the top 8 And then so the males would be like the top 9, and then the females would be at top 5. It was just shocking.
You couldn't find any more than 5. Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? But yeah,
No, they
we
couldn't.
do,
They couldn't.
we
It
do
is very
encounter
strange,
it
really.
all the time. Yeah, definitely.
Right. So here's another one on a completely different tangent. From LM, I don't know, just got the initials, was posted. Did any of you ever buy an item of clothing from those optimistic line drawings in the music paper ads? So
Yes.
did you buy any goth pants or Bowie trousers or Clash boots or
None of those. I tell you, the only thing I ever bought, in fact, I had 2 garments, and one of them's got a kind of interesting history. Well, they both have got something going on, really. So it was 1973, and we went on holiday. The Rileys went on holiday to the Isle of Man. And we there's a photograph of myself in a David Bowie t-shirt. I was so proud of it. And I still see it now in the pages of the NME from 73 and 74. And I'm stood outside a place called Summerland, which was a big kind of water park, indoor water park, which was encased basically in plastic. And it infamously, tragically burnt down the week after we were there. And I think 70 people passed away or something. So I'd been in there the week before that unfolded. Like I say, an awful, awful tragedy. There's a picture of me in my David Bowie t-shirt and my little blouse on jacket, like leaning on the wall outside Summerland. So that was the first thing I bought. But then the second item that resonates with me, and it's in there all the time, and it is it looks like a kind of a drunken lord, really, but it's probably supposed to be a homeless person thinking about it again, with a bottle of gin and a load of beer bottles around it, and it had the booze is the only answer, right? Drink responsibly, obviously. And but here's a story. Steve Hanley bought it. It was Steve Hanley's. And then after a while, for some reason, he just got a bit fed up of it. And so he said, do you want that? I said, yeah, of course. Okay. What? Hey, 16, of course I do. Yeah, I'd had a pint. And but it ended up on the front cover of It's a New Thing by The Fall. So we're all doing Here's me all over. The Fall, they've all got their arms up like John Travolta. That is what it's supposed to be. But everybody else has got the right hand up, which is probably the right hand to put up. And I've got the left one. And not only that, it's got a big hole under the arm. And I got home, I was like, I'm on a record. I am on an actual 7-inch record. John Peel's played it. I cannot believe it. My mum looked at it, she went, what are you wearing? You've got a hole under your, all the shame. You brought shame on the family. And then so not only has it got the hole under it, he's also booze is the only answer. But I wished I'd kept it. I do remember, it was probably about 20 years ago, I looked at it and just threw it out. And really, I should have kept it because, I mean, if they had a sandblasted it and fumigated it, it could have ended up in a very, very poor, low-down version of the Hard Rock Cafe.
I was going to say it'd be in a museum by now. I've got to say, I'm drawing a blank here. I didn't sort of used to send off. I used to make my own T-shirts and get fabric paint and just make my own band T-shirts. So, don't know about you two guys. What about you?
No, never did it.
No. Though actual product placement.
Stand up.
Nice.
Arthur,
you can get
Arthur listens
to our
the
t-shirt range.
Arthur listens to the Parallel Universe on Patreon if you're paying attention.
Yeah, we do have a range of t-shirts available for anyone who's joining.
And there he is.
And beer mats.
Yeah.
And beer mats as well. I need one of those.
All our things you can get as t-shirts, beer mats, mouse mats, cups, all in the Redbubble store. You can.
I need a beer
market stall, Jase.
Pillowcases. It's all available.
I'll send you a beer mat, Rob.
All right, mate. Thank you very much. Brilliant.
Okay, next.
I've got a question.
All right.
Go on.
From Tony in Brum. It says, I'm a big fan of your guitar tutorials. Have you ever tried to play something only to find you didn't have the skill necessary? Yeah, of course, loads of stuff. You can never play everything.
What?
Go on then, examples.
Name it and shame it, because I think you're lying.
I think you can do anything.
No, I can't.
Yes,
No, there's like, I mean, all the kind of young kids now on like YouTube and Instagram are just amazing. They can, they grew up about 4 years old learning to play Eruption off YouTube.
Yeah,
and it's all very technical, but they're just there's a generation of like super technical players who just you can't compete with.
I like the way that you do the Fall Friday thing on Twitter, and every now and then you'll ring
That was
me up
your
and
idea.
say, well, yeah, I just said, do you want to do this one? And then it just took off, didn't it? But
Did you?
so,
Oh, is that Arthur? What's...
Arthur's, he's bored.
He's not had a question. That's the trouble.
Oh, we need a question for Arthur.
Sorry, mate. But yeah, I was saying to you, like, yeah, do Fiery Jack, which is basically 3 notes.
Yeah.
And you do it. So fair play to it. And the next minute you're doing Jump by Van Halen. So yeah, it's something for everybody. You would have to say.
Try and mix it up. Try and keep it varied.
Yeah, I always wonder how long that takes you to work out on average, Jase.
Well, it's very. How long's a piece of string? You know,
Okay, Jump by Van Halen.
Well, it's not about how long it takes to work out. It's really about how long it takes to practice, so you can kind of nail it in one take.
Right.
Because he's Eddie Van Halen, you know, and
yeah, sure,
he's up there with the best. So you kind of keep practicing, but that's the thing I love about it is that having a go, and you will, you know. So things like Van Halen are just great fun to try and work out and play, you know, because that's what I grew up with. Back in the 80s, he was like the god. He was like,
he was, wasn't he? Yeah.
There we go. Hang on.
Oh God, no.
Yeah.
Have some bloody respect, will you? Hang on.
Roy Orbison.
Peters and Lee.
Jump. There you go. Bloody easy.
I've never heard that version before.
No.
Incredible.
Oh, right. Oh, apparently, just a comment come in. My lad, who is now in a band, loved and used your guitar videos, Jason. Okay, so I've helped somebody. That's
Well
good.
done.
Oh, great,
work, mate.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Right, so
Yeah,
moving on. Can any of you touch your nose with your tongue from Trev in Knutsford?
I'm glad we got to the really deep questions.
Because it's like last question, isn't it? Because we've got to 9.
I think that's one for Arthur.
No, I
He can do
can't.
it, no
Sadly,
problem.
I've got an advantage because my nose is a foot long, but I can't do it.
do it again. I missed that. Ooh, gosh,
yeah,
you can.
you can.
Wow, you can.
In fact, I can touch my forehead with my tongue. I'm like a gecko. I clean my eyes with my tongue every now and then.
Okay, no, I can't.
No,
But you
I think
can.
I'll answer that quite categorically.
I tell you what, next time you come round over to this neck of the woods, you can touch my nose with your
No.
tongue.
I think I might stay in Beverly for a while. I'm quite happy here.
Yeah, okay. Any more, Jase?
Okay.
Anything more serious?
I think let's have a look. I think that's most of the serious ones. Let's have a quick skim through. I've been posting them, but we've got new questions that come up. Who decides what's your favourite thing? Oh yeah, have you ever changed your opinion of an artist or band because of an article in one of the papers we've covered?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question, isn't it?
It is.
Ooh, I need to
That's from
think.
Christopher.
Yeah, good question, Christopher. You think of an example.
It does take some thinking, that
Doesn't it, really?
I'm not used to thinking.
No, I'm not either. It's quite difficult.
I suppose, you know, I mean, there's always the case for artists that you don't like the music and therefore you just kind of dismiss them. But then you can read an article by them. I can't think of any specific example here, but you read an article by them and you think, actually, that's a pretty good person. Now that's, you know, they got a great sense of humor. Politically, they're great. I think the music personally is crap, but who cares? You know, you're a good person and you've got some good kind of ideals about you, and so it's all fair enough. But I can't actually think of anybody off the top of my head. I mean, it would be easy to think of somebody that you like who really let you down, wouldn't it? But I can't think of that.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I mean, it is interesting. Sometimes you get just finding stuff out about somebody and maybe their background and just the kind of things they've gone through, which just puts the music in a different context. So you can listen to music differently after that. I think that happens, but I can't really remember any specific moments where, you know, you don't like somebody, you read something about them and then think, oh yeah, I need to go back to that person because I've misjudged them.
And then you still wouldn't like the music if you didn't like it before. So
exactly. Yeah,
that's
exactly.
the point, I suppose.
But yeah, good question though. I like that.
Right. Well, I think we've got to the end of an hour. So I think that's probably time. I think got through most of the questions. So I think it's time to do a little sign off and say goodbye to people who've joined in tonight.
Yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
taking part. Much appreciated. We've enjoyed it. I mean, it's almost like being in show business this for once in my life. I've sat there. So before we actually went doing this live Zoom, we had the YouTube broadcast of the parallel universe going on behind us, and we're all Zoom. It's all really, really bloody exciting. And then there's people watching it and people talking to us at the other end. So
yeah, no, it's good
for us. Enjoyed it. Thank
yeah
you.
yeah,
I suppose
definitely.
one
Thanks very
question
much.
is, people can
Go on.
type in or reply on Patreon or Twitter or whatever. Or on the YouTube. You could. Would people like us to do this kind of thing again?
Okay.
'Cause
Yeah.
I think we've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
We have.
It's
Definitely
good to
enjoyed
know
it
people
tonight.
are out there and to get feedback. I am trying to get on the message boards as well on the Patreon site just to kind of reply to some stuff as well. I think that's it's just good to know people are out there and paying attention. It's very flattering.
True.
And I think,
All right,
I
then.
think it's
All
good
right.
to connect with people as much as possible.
Definitely.
So great, and I'm seeing a lot of comments coming through. People saying thanks again. Yeah, people seem to be loving it. So yeah, keep watching this space.
Well, the only disappointment is Arthur. I mean, I've been looking at that screen and he's only been there about twice.
My
Well, we need
phone's
to-
just got on low battery, you
Oh,
see.
has it?
Yeah. so
Oh
there we
no,
go.
his Arthur Cam disappeared.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
well.
Fair enough.
Can use
Next
our
time.
imagination. Right.
Yeah.
Well, in that
All right.
case, I think it's.
Thank you all. Yeah.
Thank you all for joining
Thanks
in.
for all the
I'm sure there'll be
questions.
Another one.
Cheers, you lot.
Yeah.
Bye.
Cheers all.
Bye.
See you later. Bye bye.